Good.
Okay, so it's going to be recording. I'll pause.
Myself, Susan Kirsch. I just want to welcome all of you tonight to tonight's session, and feeling really pleased just that we can all be on this learning curve together of how do we continue to come together to support each other and to explore those kinds of things that we all feel deepen and enhance and expand our own capacities to be living really full lives. So I have two parts for tonight. First, just welcoming all of you. Then in just a minute, I'm going to turn it over to Tom, who's going to help make that connection between what we do in Ions of Marin and connect us with what the options are going on in the bigger Ions community. And then I'll take us into a quiet time before we get started with the program. So Tom, that's the cue that I'm passing it on to you.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we've had several people come in the last few moments. I just want to make sure everybody is admitted. And so with that, let's see, we're up to about 30 people. Okay, just let me admit 2 more people.
I can do that, Tom. You go ahead.
Oh, okay, I will. Thanks, Pat. So anyway, I'm going to share screen here for a moment and basically just take you over onto a cruise of the IONS website, again, like I usually try to do. And as you'll see up here, you go to the calendar, and that's going to give you the upcoming talks and workshops and so forth. And so my main thing is just to make sure everybody knows where that is and to highlight a few of the ones coming up. And we do have, just in the next week, actually tomorrow, there's one, it's a periodic workshop, and it does start tomorrow. And it's the Possibility Accelerator. And basically what this is applying positive thinking to achieve your goals. The next one that's coming up sounds really interesting. It's lucid dreaming and living lucidly, gateway to the inner self. And it's for explorers of lucid dreaming. Now, I have to admit that while I've had some hallucinations over my lifetime, not too many, but I think it's related to lucid dreaming and envisioning. And this is for beginners to those who are far down the path. And then there are a couple other workshops, Journey of Soul Initiation, and a whole series of Tuesday talks, Open Minds, and the Scientific Resurrection of Magic. And another one that's pretty interesting that I sent over to my friend Rick Hansen, psychologist, and that's Parapsychological Association, which basically is mediumship. So connecting with those who have gone on. So anyway, I think I've used up my time, but you can see they're just, all of these things are just coming up in the next week or 10 days. So there's a lot to do. Some of them are free, some require a fee. So.
Thank you so much. I love the way you're using, this share screen to bring these forward, and anybody can go to ions.com and get the details of any of those programs.
Right.
It reminds me too of how lucky it feels to be associated with something that is doing these extraordinary kinds of experiments and scientific study and making it so readily available. So as we get ready for tonight's talk, which also is going to be amazing, I think, Cynthia, Sue, thank you for being with us. I want to invite us all to just take a minute or two to kind of get settled and present. And, you know, we just know there's a whole lot going on in our country that's really important. We know there's a whole lot going on in our own health and awareness about health and education. Almost any aspect of our life is inviting us to be mindful of how we're participating in it. So in a minute, I'm going to ring a meditation bell to take us into like just a minute or so of meditation. But I'd like to read these words from the intro for tonight's session to kind of begin to get us centered in the concepts and ideas for tonight. And so we know our session is called Walking with Feet in Two Worlds. And the lead into this is to say, when we begin to notice that physical reality responds to our thoughts and our feelings, we gain an opportunity to walk with feet in two worlds. We find ourselves experiencing a walking dream, a waking dream state of consciousness where we can allow for the unexpected to occur. So with those words in mind, I invite you to close your eyes or take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, be present in this moment before we start tonight's program. And when the minute or so is over, I will ring the bell again to just kind of gently bring us back into this current space, shared space. So as you come back and be present for tonight, I'll turn it over to you, my colleague, Pat Palmer.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to see everyone. I'm so thankful we're continuing these monthly Noetic Sciences events in our community, Marin, and welcome to those visiting from other areas as well. I'm so excited about tonight. Cynthia Sue Larson is always so interesting, and actually, Cynthia, I think you've addressed our group maybe once a year for the last few years because I know you're always so up on what's happening and it's always so interesting. So I'm so glad to have you. Thank you for making the time to come and present these ideas to this group. I'm gonna go ahead and read your bio and then turn the program over to you. But I will mention that many of us are familiar with chat from using Zoom. So we will have the chat open during the meeting if you want to mention anything to anyone. And of course, Susan and I will see it, and Tom. Cynthia is not going to be reading chat because she's going to be busy. So we will have the presentation by Cynthia Sue, and then afterward we'll have probably 20, 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes left for discussion with Cynthia Sue about the presentation, and we'll be doing that by raising our hands, and I'll remind you how to do that when the time comes. So let me tell a little of your background, Cynthia Sue, although everybody may know it already. Cynthia Sue Larson is the best-selling author of several books, including Quantum Jumps, Reality Shifts, and High Energy Money. Cynthia has a degree in physics from UC Berkeley, an MBA degree, a Doctor of Divinity, and a second degree black belt in Kuk Sul Wan. Cynthia is founder of Reality Shifters, president of the International Mandela Effect Conference, managing director of Foundations of Mind, and creator and host of Living the Quantum Dream. She has been featured in numerous shows, including Gaia, the History Channel, Coast to Coast AM, One World with Deepak Chopra, and BBC. And Cynthia reminds us to ask in every situation, how good can it get? And she will tell you how to subscribe to her monthly e-zine. I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone and turn the program over to Cynthia.
Thank you, Pat. And I hope you're recording. You did start record?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Oh, Cynthia, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I thought I did it and then I double clicked it or something. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think I double tapped it. I was trying to be so good about it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in just a minute. Let's see if I can find that guy. And then let's see. Should be there. And then I'll go to, can you see the screen? Okay. Hopefully that works for everybody. So this is my, I hope it looks good for you. I've got some sort of thing on the top that's interfering with the.
No, it's fine from this.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good.
Mhm.
Okay, so this first slide just shows that this is the title of my talk tonight, and I will be discussing the topic as you guys described it. I love the artwork that was supplied by Unity of Marin, and I thought it was so perfect. I had to put it as the cover slide. So tonight, the key ideas that I'll be talking about cover what is reality, taking a look at a right brain perspective bias that we tend to have, redeeming left brain thought, and experiencing multiple worlds. So those are the four larger areas that we'll be walking through tonight together. My background, you did describe it, Pat, beautifully. Basically, I'm just an author and an intuitive life coach. I focus on mind-matter interaction. I have been writing books, articles, and my monthly e-zine, Reality Shifters, on these topics since 1999. Actually, a little bit before that, but before that, there wasn't a website, so not much to show for it. But I think I started in 98, actually, but it's the first visible evidence is 1999. And my website is realityshifters.com. That's the best place to contact me. If you'd like to get a copy of the slides from tonight, I'll be happy to send them to you by email. So you can just email me at cynthia@realityshifters.com. I can give you the complete slideshow. So what is reality? Reality can be considered to be the fundamental essence of existence. To discern what is real from what is not, we do rely upon our senses, our reasoning, and our intuition. Our senses provide physical input. Our mind establishes the framework to place those experiences, and our intuition knows what feels right for us and what we truly need. My dictionary says that reality is the state of things as they are, or as they appear to be, rather than as one might wish them to be. And it defines real as existing or occurring in the physical world, not imaginary, fictitious, dreamlike, or theoretical. What I'd like us to consider tonight is that what we wish for, dream, and imagine is actually the framework and foundation of all that we create. And of course, the essence of everything that is real springs from what is not yet real. Everything that we build begins as something that was only previously dreamt or imagined. So now I'd like to share with you a story. This is included in my book, Reality Shifts, When Consciousness Changes the Physical World. But I'd love to talk about it because it was around 1970 when I was on a vacation with my family, my two parents and my sister. And we were going to visit a series of very tiny islands in the Pacific Ocean. Some were like Yap and Palau, and some were bigger like Tonga and Bora Bora. But we were on a very tiny island that didn't really, I don't even think it had a name, certainly not one that we knew of. We took a boat over to it and had a picnic lunch. My parents went on some hike, and I was just sitting on the beach with some sand crabs who lived in holes, and each crab dug a hole for itself. And anytime there was any sign of motion, the crabs would scurry down to safety down their hole. And I was mesmerized just watching as one crab absent-mindedly was just effortlessly gathering, scooping up a little ball of sand in its claw, and then holding it up in the air. And it looked like so much fun. I was just a child at the time, I made a similar ball and playfully tossed it towards some crabs. My sandball hit an unsuspecting crab, and that one scooped up a ball of sand, held it aloft, and they kind of stand on their tippy toes, and they're looking around as much as they can, holding that ball of sand, but at the same time, kind of looking tense and concerned. These crabs were not as playful as I was. They looked like they were taking it very serious, and they were looking concerned. After several long moments of sizing up the scene, that crab lobbed the sand at another crab with great precision, and that other crab returned fire. The resulting melee was quite a sight to see. There were sandballs flying in all directions with the crabs. They weren't throwing them at me. Even though I was sitting only a few feet away, even though I was the one who actually threw the first sandball, these crabs did not see me. I was not real to them. And humans seldom visited this place. It was a really small island in the Pacific Ocean. And I think to these crabs, it was as if humans didn't exist. In my book, Reality Shifts, in 1999, I included the story about how Captain Cook had come to Tahiti and his ship had not been seen. And just as he was invisible to the Tahitians, I was invisible to the sand crabs. And you may wonder, why is that? And this is an illustration that we definitely seem to live in this conceptualization of a universe of which we have a very limited understanding. We're not so different from those crabs. And there's a quote by Niels Bohr that I think is fabulous when it comes to the thinking about interpreting reality. He says, the fact that religions through the ages have spoken in images, parables, and paradoxes means simply that there are no other ways of grasping reality to which they refer. But that does not mean that it is not a genuine reality. And splitting this reality into an objective and a subjective side won't get us very far. What he's referring to there is that we can have this assumption in our Western science that we can be an objective observer, that we can observe something from outside the glass window of the room, and that somehow we're not making any difference to the outcome of that experiment. The relevance of this is, of course, Niels Bohr came up with the Copenhagen interpretation for quantum physics, and he's touching on this idea that there appears to be a collapse of the wave function in quantum physics, where when you make an observation, you're absolutely making a difference just by observing, just by watching. There is no such thing as that objective observer. Dr. Carl Pribram is a Stanford neuroscientist, and he suggested that if we saw reality without the mathematical computations that our brains are constantly performing, we would observe a very different universe in the frequency domain without any sense of time or space, just events. This tickles my fancy because it's very similar to what the indigenous peoples around the world see it as. They have a very verb-driven language often, very event-driven view of reality. When it comes to interpreting reality, our visual perception is literally full of holes. We have no photoreceptors in the middle of our retinas, and we only see our visual range of the spectrum of light, for example. This is true of all of our senses. They're all limited. And Dr. Donald Hoffman has a quote, "To experience is to construct in each modality and without exception." Donald Hoffman is an expert in the field of vision, and I was excited some 20 years ago when I first found his work and his books, and he's continued to be a front-running scientist showing that our reality really looks like a construction completely, and he takes it further. So here, what you're seeing on this picture is basically a desktop laptop screen, like what you'd expect to see on your computer. Up in the upper left is the recycle bin or trash, and so on and so forth, the software and programs and files. That same professor, Dr. Donald Hoffman, he's a teacher at UC Irvine. He suggests that our perception of reality is an interface of symbols, concealing vastly more complex interactions. And he uses this analogy of the computer desktop with those icons that are very simplified. So when we put something in that little recycle bin or in that trash folder, we know it's gone, or we think it's gone. Actually, that's just the beginning of a series of computer computations. And if we knew machine language, we could follow it further. Most of us are not savvy to the machine language, and I don't think we'd want to be. It's too much information. So we're very happy to just let those systems handle things, so we don't have to think about them. But when we realize that our senses are doing this, and we take a look at this constructed reality that we're viewing all the time, and recognize it's based on that narrow slice of bandwidth perceptions, looking simply at vision here. On the left, you'll see the humans, like us, have 3 color receptors, blue, green, and red, in order to take in all of everything around us. In comparison, the amazing mantis shrimp have 12 color receptors. Not only do they have 12 color receptors, but those are spread out much farther across that band of spectral sensitivity that you can see on this chart, so that it's covering wavelengths going way down from 300 all the way to 700. There aren't too many gaps there. They're able to see quite a bit. And we have no idea really what the world looks like to them. It's difficult to imagine. Another bizarre feature of our constructed reality that fascinates me is the way that we synchronize clapping hands, the vision of it and the sound of it. And you can do this back when we can get together with people again, or maybe you can do it 30 meters away, it's a safe distance. You can have someone clap their hands, and within 30 meters, you'll notice that the sound and the vision go together, that there's that perfect synchrony. If you have someone on that measured mark 30 meters away, and they just take a step back and they do that clap again, the weirdest thing happens, and you'll hear the lag of the sound between the vision, of that 80 millisecond lag that is actually always happening. But the bizarre thing is you can play with it. It's a great experiment for those of us who want to play with this. Maybe it's a good science experiment with the family, take them out to a park, measure that 30-meter mark, and that's about 10 yards roughly, and see what happens. But it's really cool to see that happen. Moving on to taking a look at the right brain perspective bias. These are mostly my slides. That one's at the UC Berkeley campus. That's our campanile right next to our physics building where I studied physics. In this early 17th century, there was a way of knowing that quickly rose to prominence. And so I think of it when I see this. I just think, yes, UC Berkeley, physics, calculus, all those good days. So powerful was this new approach to knowledge that's been around for the last 400 years that within just a few centuries, it attained dominance in practically all fields of human endeavor, and it became the gauge by which we measure truth and reality. There does appear to be a bias toward the right brain, and science's dominance has been seen by some to come at quite a price, such as the marginalization of another way of knowing, imagination. Here we have the author of the book, Lost Knowledge of the Imagination, that's Gary Lachman. And he explains that without imagination, the world's only half alive. Imagination is both a way of knowing reality and a way of bringing reality into being. Within his wonderful book, he mentions a quote by Francis Cornford, which is from the book From Religion to Philosophy. And this is beautiful. It says, driven by deep-lying need to master the world by understanding it, science works steadily toward its goal, a perfectly clear conceptual model of reality, adapted to explain all phenomena by the simplest formula that can be found. When we contemplate the finished result, we see that in banishing the vague, it has swept away everything in which another type of mind finds all the value and significance of the world. And then here's a cartoon just to illustrate where it can really go to its logical extreme. And Jacques Barzun, the historian and philosopher, he famously coined that word scientism. He said, science gives birth to scientism, which is the fallacy of believing that the method of science must be used on all forms of experience, and given time will settle every issue. Ideally, we would not do that. We would recognize science changes, it grows, it's a wonderful tool, and it can be used in partnership with other ways of knowing. Redeeming left brain thought. And here there's a picture from one of NASA's amazing photographs that they've made available to the public, and a quote by David Bohm. David Bohm is he's one of our quantum heroes for those of us who follow quantum interpretations and like the holistic approaches. He is the originator of a holographic interpretation of quantum physics. And he said, in some sense, man is a microcosm of the universe. Therefore, what man is a clue to the universe. We are enfolded in the universe. And Henri Corbin, he is a French philosopher and author who insisted that the imaginal is quite real. In fact, more real than the physical realm. And humans have a corresponding faculty by which it can be known because it is so real. One of his quotes says, between the universe that can be apprehended by pure intellectual perception, the universe of the cherubic intelligences, and the universe perceptible to the senses, there is an intermediate world, the world of idea images, of archetypal figures, of subtle substances, of immaterial matter. This world is as real and objective, as consistent and subsistent as the intelligible and sensible worlds. It is an intermediate universe where the spiritual takes body and the body becomes spiritual. And with his vantage point, he was perfect to write about Carl Jung. Here, I'm just going to take a moment on this slide. Take a look at what it says. At the top, it says quantum waves, particle duality. And then it has a sentence, light is a, and see what you notice first. It's just fun. Once you stare at it for a little bit or back up or blur your eyes, you might notice it says a couple things. It both says particle, and if you back up far enough and blur your eyes, you can get it to look like wave. And indeed, light can be seen as both particle and wave. When we look at a particle that's localized in space-time and do observations through experimental apparatuses using, for example, the double slit experiment, and we have a sensing device, an observational sensing device that's located in one of the two slits on the double slit experiment, where a particle is being fired singly, like one at a time, one photon at a time, between one of two slits that are parallel to each other. And we want to know which one it went through. If you put a detector in one of those slits, you can know for sure which particle detector detected the particle, because when you've got, as long as you're measuring it that way, you will see a particle, and that's the way it seems to be traveling. When you remove the detector from the slit and instead you're making an observation some other way, you can end up with a diffraction pattern, even with just one photon at a time. It seems like it's interfering with itself, acting like a wave, like when you throw, like when you have two pebbles landing in a pond and you get interference patterns in the pond ripples. Those are the kind of interference bands that you see on the panel that's behind the double slits. So what this ends up being is what people call the observer effect, which is when you're looking, the particle seems to be localized, you know where it is. When you're not looking, the particle doesn't seem like a particle at all. It seems like a wave, the quantum wave spread over space and time. What's really interesting to me is that when you bring this awareness into the way that humans think, we're noticing, as Jerome Busemeyer and Peter Bruza point out in their excellent book, Quantum Models of Cognition and Decision, that the wave nature of an indefinite state captures the psychological experience of conflict, ambiguity, confusion, and uncertainty. The particle nature of a definite state captures the psychological experience of conflict resolution, decision, and certainty. So these two gentlemen were absolutely studying, as the title of the book suggests, cognition and decision-making in humans, and noticing that what seems like a wacky, crazy way that humans make decisions, which didn't seem logical according to Boolean logic, it does make sense according to quantum logic. And part of the way that it makes sense is these fascinating observations about the way that we think, the way we make decisions, the way we remember things. Sometimes there is uncertainty, like we're playing in those quantum foam and quantum sea of possibility waves. So if we're looking at definite measurables and ambiguous unmeasurables, there's definitely, again, with that bias of left brain thinking, you can see it right there, because in our culture or Western civilization, you'll notice there's a bias toward focusing on the things we can measure, such as money, the number of houses or cars or what have you, over the unmeasurables, such as love, connection, meaning, and purpose. Personally, choosing between those two, I would suggest that if anybody I care about, I'd say, take a look at those unmeasurables. Those are pretty great. That's where happiness lies. For me, it certainly does. That's what I would choose. Now, getting into dreams and daydreams is fascinating. This is a picture I took in Maui, in the sort of remote eastern part of Maui. Many of our greatest scientific breakthroughs have arisen thanks to some kind of direct awareness shared via dreams and daydreams, offering views of realities beyond current knowledge of the time. And I like this image because when I first had a Kundalini awakening, I would constantly be dreaming about the walls in my house were just like falling away. They were crumbling, like the walls were vanishing. The ceiling was vanishing. And outside, I was kind of scared in the dreams, but I would see outside, it looked like paradise. I think that was very symbolic. And so when I saw this scene in real life, I thought, this is amazing. It reminds me of that feeling. Here's a picture that came from Leonardo da Vinci's sketchbook, circa 1500. Some people think it was done in 1492. Anyway, it was centuries before anyone invented the bicycle. And when they first invented the bicycle, it doesn't look as much like our modern bike as this does. And here's a quote by Leonardo da Vinci. He said, "Why does the eye see a thing more clearly in dreams than the imagination when awake?" And I don't have the answer to it, but when Leonardo asks a question like that, and when he can see a bicycle several hundred years before it's invented, I think he's got a point here. So there's something going on with these dreams. And I've had dreams like that too, that feel realer than real. I've seen colors that I haven't seen in real life. I've gotten visions in daydreams and dreams both that seem just amazing. And they're so far beyond what we tend to think is possible. Here's another fabulous book by John Perkins. He's the author of The World is As You Dream It, Teachings from the Amazon and the Andes. And he points out in his writings that most indigenous societies knew how to harness this kind of direct knowing to benefit from herbal healing properties of plants and their surroundings by adopting a waking dream experience of life and reality and feeling into the experience of everything all around, the land, the plants, and the animals, dreaming with them, dreaming together. And so he literally means the world is as you dream it. That book in particular talks about shape shifting, reality shifting. So it's right up your alley if you're interested in these topics tonight. And then overcoming right brain bias is very important because our intuition and imagination is capable of best leading the way because it's capable of feeling optimal outcomes, adjacent realities, and so forth. They can also feel what others are feeling and what others are dreaming about or daydreaming about. Whereas the rational mind is really superb at handling the details. So I borrowed this illustration from someone's wonderful inclusion of this quote. I'm not sure it really is Albert Einstein's quote, but it's a good one. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. Well, that's certainly a good way to do this if you can develop faith, trust, and respect for the intuitive mind and bring it back into a position of respect in our society. Here's a quote by Stephen Herod Booner, and he talks a lot about sensory gating. Sensory gating is a concept where we limit even further. We've already got a very narrow bandwidth of all of our senses. We can only see the visual spectrum, and that's it, red to violet, whereas a mantis shrimp is definitely outperforming us. Sensory gating is what we do when we take the tiny little narrow slit we have and we narrow it further so that we're able to fit into our society and our culture. I remember doing this when I was quite young. I remember that originally I could see when there was a sound, I would see waves of energy moving. I'm doing what I would feel. If I was in my bedroom and someone slammed a door in the other end of the house, there'd be a wave of colors that would come through the room. And then as someone's walking, it would keep going and there would be shapes to the colors and then it would stabilize. I think newborns are very good at this because there's that synesthesia going on. I write about this in my book, Aura Advantage. So if you're interested in that, you can pursue that. But back to sensory gating. This is definitely associated with right brain bias. And what Stephen says is that children who begin working at an early age with music have much less pre-attentional or unconscious gating in the neural network that attends to sound. Gating in general develops over time. In other words, it's like we just shut down our senses, they just close in. So with exposure, the pre-attentional self learning to gate whatever's not important to the conscious mind. Children by nature have much less gating than adults, absolutely. And I've seen that with children noticing reality shifts. They're much more fluid at that. So here we go. What you've been waiting for, experiencing multiple worlds. So this is the good stuff. It's all good, but I wanted to do the preamble so that you can walk with me and recognize that we're going to get into the feeling experience of what does this feel like? Well, it starts with a quote from Rumi. As you start to walk on the way appears. It may look like there's no other step. You might think it's just water. So it takes a leap of faith to step forward and find the next stone to step on. It helps to get yourself out of the way. Here's the famous choreographer Alonzo King's quote, "Get yourself out of the way so that what's larger can enter." This is true of anybody that's working in the arts in any shape or form, science too, for that matter. You're going to do a lot better when you get yourself out of the way and recognize that there's something bigger happening. Here's author Carolyn North recommending that we can think with more than our brain. And she says, yes, that is my search and has been since the 3rd grade, to listen and feel for that larger world, to enter in all its moods and dimensions, all its feelings and wonderments. I believe those who think only with their brains have no idea what they are missing. And Carolyn North is a local Bay Area author. I think she was associated with the Fintorn community. She's written several books and she's excellent at communicating these ideas. James Hillman recommends that we harmonize with our deep self and the environment. He says an individual's harmony with his or her own deep self requires not merely a journey to the interior, but a harmonizing with the environmental world. And then back to Stephen Herod Booner. The book I'm quoting from tonight is called Plant Intelligence and the Imaginal Realm. And here is a picture. The illustration here is not from his book. It's just I went and found a fractal image that we can look at. So you can see when a fractal image, a mathematical construct like this is looked at, you can zoom in. And when you zoom in on any part, you'll see in the microcosm what we're seeing right here. So this pattern just keeps repeating at every level. And the quote that I find fascinating is that only at the edges of chaos can complex systems flourish. This threshold line, that edge between anarchy and frozen rigidity, is not like a fence line. It is a fractal line. It possesses non-linearity. Wow. So how do we get there? One way to get there is to switch off that left brain thinking. And there are so many ways to do it. You know, there's that song, there's 50 ways to leave your lover. There's more than that to switch off your left brain thinking. This particular book, Contact Modalities, the author Grant Cameron set out to show just how many he could easily come up with. And he found, I think, more than 70, and I'm sure there are even more than that. So what are we talking about? These are ways such as meditation, nature, being in nature, mantras, eye gazing, working with yoga and qigong in certain ways, breathing techniques, koans like Zen koans, hypnagogic, entering into the hypnagogic or the hypnopompic state, either when you're waking up or falling asleep. Prayer can be that gateway, drumming, dancing, chanting, and so many more. And so if you feel like I don't even know how to turn off my left brain, I'm sure there's going to be some way that works for you because there are so many ways to do it. And this book is fabulous at demonstrating and going through them. That's what it's all about. Grant Cameron's focus primarily in the past has been on the ET UFO experience. He started noticing it seems to be a gateway contact experience to cosmic mind. So that's why I was checking that out. Another way to switch off left brain thinking that works for me personally is to practice it regularly on a regular daily practice and basis. Just take some time through meditation to turn off that analytical left brain that wants to label and time and measure everything. And you want to just get into that gestalt awareness, that sense for me that I love so much in nature, where I can just be with these flowers in my garden. This is my garden, and just feel clearly and deeply what's going on with the bees, the ants, the hummingbirds, the butterflies, just nature. Or maybe there's just a feeling of wind and presence of nature itself. What I recommend for personalizing your meditations, if you don't want to you don't have to get that book by Grant Cameron. You can just build your own. Here's how to make your own. You can find and combine a favorite personal practice. It's any kind of activity that you enjoy. It could be listening to music. It could be gardening. I've checked off watch clouds. We can pretty much usually do that except on a sunny day, and then go for a walk. So if you can do those things, you can, or just list whatever activities you're capable of doing that work for you, and then combine an activity with a preferred mental focus of attention, which could be something as simple as breathing deeply and slowly. So you just inhale and then you exhale and take a little longer on the exhale than you did on the inhale. Pay attention to it. Or you could observe your thoughts, or you could notice your bodily feelings, or you could let go of your thoughts. You could just focus on the bee or the flower or whatever. What happens when you do this is you can start feeling meaning in every sensory input. Now, this is really important. Again, I'm quoting Stephen Harad Booner. The emotional response to each tiny incoming sensory bit can tell the conscious mind, if you pay attention, to how you feel in the same way that musicians pay attention to sound. A considerable amount about the meaning inside of every particular sensory input that you experience. So, for instance, when I was sitting next to, I'm going to go back to that slide. I was sitting next to the, I'll move my cursor here. See these purple flowers there? I was sitting right next to those. And it just felt so delicious to be near those flowers. Then I noticed that there were honeybees flying around them. And they would come and their wings would flutter right close to my skin. And I was surprised I didn't feel worried or scared about it. I could feel the essence of the honeybee love, that kind of community that they have. And I could feel that I was very included in that was a friendly gesture on their part. Sort of like saying, thank you for watering these flowers. We really enjoy them. Something like that. No words, just the feeling. Here's the book that I've been talking about tonight, Plant Intelligence and the Imaginal Realm. And then the subtitle, Into the Dreaming of Earth. I'm mentioning this book primarily because I feel like it's so important at this time that we do start dreaming with the earth. And it's not too late. We can absolutely do it. And we can walk into how good can you get world for all of us when we do this, by reclaiming our capacity to feel. And here he is, Stephen again. He says, it is possible then, if you reclaim your capacity to feel, to make intelligent contact with the intelligence of any eco range in which you are embedded, to establish rapport and deep friendship, and to learn from that relationship, to in fact learn to think like a mountain from the mountain itself. He adds, and that's a picture of our family dog from back when he was alive. He's passed on now. But Stephen continues, sensitivity to the tiniest shifts in feeling will develop just as they do in musicians with sound complexes. And with experience, the ability to determine the meanings inside those feelings will become a reliable skill. In other words, it becomes possible to immediately know the intent of the dog as soon as it is seen, non-kinesthetically felt. And of course, our family dog, you can see on his face, I think all of us who know dogs know that's the face of a friendly creature. Sort of like, what are you doing? I'm here to help. And his usual mood. I'm going to share another experience with another dog, though. Just a minute. First, I'm going to talk about engaging in continuous dialogue, because this is so important. When we recognize that we're constantly, when you get into the feeling state, then you start to notice that you're getting feelings when you don't think you are. You don't realize you're in a conversation and suddenly you are. We can experience the sensitivity to feeling when experiencing a waking dream reality that it allows for the unexpected to occur. Our passing thoughts are answered by the cosmos as we engage in continuous dialogue. So I recommend soft eyes, where it's that unfocused, like if you're just looking at the whole garden as a whole, not focusing too tightly on any one thing. Open heart, that's just feeling that your heart is soft and open. And open mind, meaning that you're feeling just comfortable, safe, and open-minded. We can be relaxed and reverent when greeting the unknown. Here we go. So this is what happened to me in that exact state of mind. I met a pack of wild dogs on an empty road in remote eastern Maui. So back in 2011, I had taken the road to Hana with some friends, and we spent the night because it's just such a long road and you don't want to rush that trip. So we stayed in a gated house. It had a moat, it had gates, 2 fences with a moat in between. And I was wondering, I didn't really think, why is that? So I just got up early one morning to gather fruit. Everyone else was asleep. I thought, well, I want to see the sunrise. I want to get up and bring some fresh breakfast. I'll pick something because there's so many fruit trees here. So out on the road, I was very surprised. After I'd been picking quite a few fruit, I sort of was putting them in my shirt. I had a nice it was bigger than the bag I brought. So I met a pack of wild dogs. They all looked like they were pit bull mixes. No one had told me that there are wild dogs roaming the roads. I was not prepared for this. And then the leader, she stepped forward ahead of the pack, about 1 or 2 yards forward. And we were about 15, 20 feet apart. And I'm just staying calm. I'm just staying in that state of grace, that open mind, open heart, exactly what we're talking about. So sometimes you're tested. It's like, okay, we're going to do this. Let's stay in that calm state. I know dogs can read everything. And sure enough, she's telepathically sending me ideas and questions. She wanted to know if she could come back to the house with me. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I said, well, it needs to be just you, not everybody. And she's like, yes. And I said, and it's just for the day. It's not, it's just today only. It's a 1-day deal. And I said, you can be yard dog for the day. And I realized I'm going to need to tell everybody else who's there because I'm not the only human there. So you're going to need to give me a minute. But as soon as I mentally agreed, you can be yard dog for the day, she knew where I was staying. There were several houses here. She knew exactly which one it was. She trotted over to it, jumped the fence. She flew over this like 5-foot fence over the moat and then cleared the other 5-foot fence like it was nothing. And then she's in the yard. And then I thought, oh gosh, I better hurry because I had to go through the security gate with the codes and everything and then tell everybody there's a dog in the yard today. But it worked out great. And she just jumped around, had the time of her life. There was one other animal communicator with us in the group of like 5 or 6 of us. So I quickly explained the whole situation to her so that the 2 of us could, in case, sure enough, it happened, she wanted to run up the steps to the level that we were on the upper deck. And so I had already explained to the other animal communicator, just remind her, you're the yard dog for the day. Just telepathically, she'll get it. She knows. She'll just probably get excited, want to thank us or something. And sure enough, she did. She ran up the stairs, but she only did that about once. And then the animal communicator just relayed the information, no problem. Dogs are great that way. They're very communicative. Going back to walking in 2 worlds, when we notice physical reality respond to our thoughts and feelings, that's when we're walking in our feet in 2 worlds. We can sense we're doing it. We can sense when we're adjacent to possible realities. You can start appreciating how inviting or uninviting they might feel to us. Like I was on a walk just the other night with my daughter and we're in the dark. We'd forgotten flashlights. And I could actually feel a reality where my daughter slipped. Her hands flew up and then she slipped. And I said, be careful. And I just anchored, like, we're not going in that reality. We don't need to fall in the dark right here. But I get those a lot. And if I ignore them, that's when they can actually happen. So I just take it as a choice point. I'm voting right now. So we're voting. Walking in 2 worlds gives us the ability to have greater awe, respect, and reverence with feelings of deep love and appreciation for all creation. We can feel this ability to dream in imaginal realms. And if you'd like some tool that you can use after tonight's talk that you can start practicing this, I recommend keeping a reality shifting journal. And in it, keep 3 categories. Things you're grateful and thankful for. Things that you're planning that you'd like to look forward to that hopefully one day can become reality. And daydreams. Daydreams could also include dreams. So it's basically anything where it just feels like this, but it would be a good dream, And so when you keep track of these, then you can start noticing that as you write them down, they literally can start coming true. It doesn't even matter if they seem unrealistic or unlikely. They're charged by the energy, and by keeping it very positive in this reality shifting book, then you're just powering this up and just checking it when you're feeling like, I love these ideas. I've got another great daydream I want to write down, another fun plan for the future, something else I'm grateful for. And it just packs all that that energy in one place with all that focus and intention. And it can help to align you with what you're dreaming of. Okay, here's a slide of Larry Hagman, and he's an actor that, as far as I know, he was the first person reported alive again ever. Before there was the Mandela effect, I reported him alive again in my book Reality Shifts: When Consciousness Changes the Physical World. That was first came out in 1998. And basically, the Mandela effect, if you haven't heard of it, it's becoming a bigger and bigger phenomenon. More and more people are collectively remembering things differently, such as where the kidneys are. There's so many of them that I could talk about that for about 2 hours straight. We currently have a conference that happens, and there's an International Mandela Effect conference community that we have a YouTube channel. You're welcome to come check out previous talks that we've given on this subject. It's just a huge, huge subject. But essentially, it's taking a reality shift on a personal level, and then what if the whole collective could experience that we remember that Nelson Mandela had died when he was incarcerated on Robben's Island, but then we come to find out, no, he survived that and he lived many, many more years. For a lot of us, that was surprising. For me, Jane Goodall was surprising for her to be alive again. There are so many, not just of the alive agains, but changes in geography, movie, song lyrics, just almost everything and anything that you can think of. Products such as the Haas avocado. I live in California. I remember it used to be Haas. Now apparently it's never been the Haas avocado. It's Hass, Hass. And I certainly would have remembered that. That's a big one for me. I remember Stouffer's stovetop stuffing. Now it's never been Stouffer's stovetop stuffing. It's only ever been Kraft, which I associate with macaroni and cheese. And I just remember all the songs and the TV ads, Stouffer's. But anyway, it's important to recognize that when you walk through worlds, you'll experience the Mandela effect for sure. Here's an experience that happened to me, which I'm going to share with you in case it rings any bells, because sometimes you might notice your keys vanish, your socks vanish in the laundry. You might notice wallet missing and so forth. Well, I lost an earring one day at the end of a conference. I was helping to coordinate the Foundations of Mind conference at the UC Berkeley campus. And Stuart Kaufman was our keynote speaker. We had lots of other excellent speakers. And it had been a long day. These are the kind of earrings, I didn't put a keeper on them at the time. That would be something that would hold it in place and not let it fall out of my ear. So I constantly checked them throughout the day. And I knew I had them both. I had them both all day long through the entire conference. It was a good day so far. But then somewhere between crossing the street from the university campus and then walking just 2 or 3 blocks to where we parked our car, that earring vanished. And I noticed it when I sat down in the car, like, wait a minute, I don't have both earrings. And I knew for sure it had fallen out just in that 2-block section. So, I checked again to make sure I'm not missing it. It's not stuck in my hair or clothing. It's not in the car. It's not. I'm checking every crack in the sidewalk. I methodically retraced all my steps. I just stayed out till it got dark, the sun set, and I thought, well, this isn't working out. I'll just go home. So we went home, and hours later, I discovered the lost earring. It was just dangling, kind of like hanging between my hair and my clothes, which was, if you've had earrings like this, then you would not miss something like that, because the first time I checked, I'm checking my hair and my clothes. So it just showed up. Even more amazingly for me personally, last January, I took a trip to Boulder, Colorado, and that's a picture of me with my friend Nicole. And we were at a beautiful restaurant. It's the Tea House, the Dushanbe Tea House in Boulderado. And we stayed and talked until they had stopped serving food and everybody else had left. But what we were talking about was heaven on earth. And so we were just talking about how good it can get, if everybody on the planet really stayed focused on how good it can get, we can literally live in a very beautiful planet, being kind with one another, respectful. It can be unlike anything we've ever seen. In any case, long story short, the waiter came and encouraged us to please stay because we realized, oh my gosh, we're still here. You took the menus, you cleared the table, everyone's gone. We should go. And he said, no, 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 please stay. He actually begged us to stay. And I thought, well, I think what was happening is the vibe of that conversation was positively influeing the whole restaurant, which has a fabulous vibe to begin with. So the waiter went back to the back room with the kitchen. And as I went to stand up to get this picture you're looking at with me and Nicole, at my feet landed from out of thin air this beautiful rose. And then both Nicole and I looked around like, did anyone throw a rose? Well, first of all, there's no one else besides us. There's nobody in the whole room. There are no roses anywhere. That's the only one. And it was a fresh, beautiful, sweet smelling rose. The story continues because then I returned home to Berkeley where I live. I flew back from the Denver airport and I had thought that I'd brought the rose with me, but I couldn't find it. I thought, well, I just must have lost it somewhere. I guess I thought I put it in this purse that you're seeing on the upper picture here. Apparently not. I don't see it. In the meantime, since I came back to Berkeley, I used that purse quite a lot, frequently. Not quite daily, but every other day. And every time I used it, I'd pile all sorts of things into it, heavy things, like a water bottle, my purse, my wallet, my camera, my iPad, all sorts of things that would just crush a little rose. And then I'd empty it all out after each use. And that happened several times over several weeks. One day I opened the purse ready to put things in it. And at the bottom of the purse, it's not empty. There's the rose, but now it's dry. And I took it out in the sunshine and took a picture of it in the palm of my hand. There it is, the same exact rose, uncrushed. So it came back. And that's meaningful because then I was talking that day with some ladies that rose was specifically very meaningful to them. So it seems like it was the gift that kept giving. One more, I'm just going to go through a couple more quick examples here. Our curtains grew. Here's a picture of a curtain that unfortunately had shrunk decades ago. I don't know what possessed me, but I washed that silk curtain at home in, I guess, warm water. It shouldn't have been that warm. What happened surprised me, shocked me, horrified me. It shrank the curtain. So ever since, the curtain, I just had to lower that rod so it would be down a ways. And anyway, it was that way for quite some time. There was like this noticeable 1.5 inch gap. Early this year, I started feeling like it would be nice if that wasn't there. So December 2020, a couple of days after thinking about it would be nice if that curtain actually fit, I was surprised and annoyed to see that curtain was now drooping at the bottom. It still had the gap at the top, but now it was baggy at the bottom. And then a light bulb went off and I thought, oh, wait a minute. That's the curtain that's always been too short and now it's back. It's like, after all these decades, it grew 1.5 inches. Yes, so that was super cool. Another mind blower for me is my laundry did itself. I was doing a radio show on the Rip and Rabbit show, which is a fabulous show about metaphysical topics. And I was talking with AJ, the host of that show, and then Moneybag 73. He's a Mandela Effect channel person. And anyway, I'd been running laundry right before the show started, but it made so much noise, I'd stopped the whole thing. I had clothing in the wash, clothing in the dryer, stopped everything. And I was talking to the two gentlemen for like a couple of hours. I said goodbye, but then I said, wait a minute, I hear something. Hang on a second. This is so weird. I hear the dryer's running, and it hadn't been. So I ran into the laundry room, checked it, and all of the laundry I'd had in the washer was now in the dryer. Everything was, that's what I'd wanted to do, is to run once the clothing had been washed separately for the colors, then it's combined in the dryer. Now it was all dry. I just heard it start. The dryer had just started somehow, and nobody else was in the house. We don't have anyone else magically doing all the laundry. So it just, the dryer just ran for like a minute or two, completely dried both loads, which had not been moved, which is physically, impossible, but yet it happened. So daily life provides us with these ample opportunities to walk in two worlds. We can practice choosing whether we greet unfolding situations from a stance of presuming that we know what is, or we can adopt the intuitive state of open awareness, feeling more deeply into adjacent possible realms. So the last story I'm going to share with you tonight happened for me at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. This was at a pivotal point in my life. I was just wondering what direction should my life take. I was going through a divorce. I had been in the banking world. I worked in that field for a long time. I was just deciding what to do, going through a divorce, and do I go back to that kind of work? What should I do? And so I thought, great, I'll walk the labyrinth. I'll ask my question, and I'll get my answer. So I walked in with the question, what direction shall my life best take? When I walked into the center of the labyrinth, expecting a reply, instead of an answer, I got a question in my mind. It was just the question, what are you living for? Right at that moment, the chimes of the church cathedral clock started to chime. And I knew it's like, wow, I have to answer this question. And I felt like I need to just, whatever it is, what am I going to say? What, putting me on the spot. And the only thing I could say is, I'm living for love. It has to be love. And I wondered, how am I going to do that? How can I best live for love? And then we're full circle. I knew my path will unfold with love every step of the way. And that's why my favorite question is always, how good can it get? So thank you very much.
I'm asking everybody to unmute yourself so that we can applaud Cynthia soon.
Yeah, I just applauded.
You can unmute yourself, yeah. That was great. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for,
Thank you.
thanks.
Very, very excellent. Good, and we have almost half an hour left for discussion. So I think the best way to do this is everybody's going to be muted. And if you would, down at the bottom of your screen, there's a place that says reactions. If you click on that, you have the choice of raising your hand, which I will see, and I'll call on you, and you can talk directly to Cynthia. So let's go ahead and do that if you would. And Cynthia, I'm going to mute everybody, and you can unmute yourself when I do that. Okay. Ed, would you unmute yourself, Ed?
Sure. Hi, Cynthia. Thanks for that.
Hi, Ed.
Yeah, my question is this. You mentioned a number of interesting phenomena that you experienced, and you also mentioned the Mandela effect. To what extent do you think these sorts of phenomena are phenomena of consciousness versus an actual like physical phenomena out there, so to speak, in the physical world?
I'm not sure. I want to be really clear on what you mean by that. So you're separating consciousness from the physical world. You're saying that there's
I guess I think of we have different domains where we can observe. We can observe, what might be called the objective domain, right? Which is, I can weigh an object to 10 decimal points of accuracy and all that sort of thing. And so that's what I'm referring to as physical. And then you have the domain of mind, where, dreams, visions, memories, and, so it's very easy to have phenomena of mind apart from what's actually physically happening. In other words, apart from what others would see in objective shared reality versus phenomena that you might experience internal. And I'm not discounting a mental or internal phenomena. I think thoughts are real, right, and important. And if I have a memory that doesn't match what others objectively say, I could think of that as very meaningful in my own psyche. Like, why am I thinking that? But I'm just curious, because in science we always try to measure things, and I'm trained in science and a mystic, right? So
yes.
So I was just curious for your take on that, like, or does it even matter to you?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So
Cynthia, could you stop sharing your screen so we could see everybody?
let me see how to do that. Hang on.
Just says stop sharing, I think.
Oh, wait. Hang on. Oh, here we go. Found it.
Good.
Thank
Now
you.
we can see everybody. Thank you.
Oh, much better. Thank
Sorry
you.
to interrupt. Yeah.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a complex subject there, and I had so many thoughts when you're asking the question, so maybe I'll answer the question in a nonlinear fashion. One of the things that comes to mind is when we look for, from the scientific viewpoint, when you want to measure it, you want to repeat the experiment, of course, you want to see, can we do that again? Some of the things I've seen are broken bones instantly healed. I've actually witnessed things that seem ridiculously impossible. I've had a flat tire on my car instantly repaired, that kind of thing. And so those are not really repeatable things in my experience. So they don't fall under, but they're very real to me. They're definitely real. This is impacting real life in a huge way. So that someone who had a broken bone now does not have a broken leg and now can go to work where previously she just started a new job. I described this experience in my book, Quantum Jumps. And I was talking with my friend Susan on the phone, and she was all shaken up because she'd been jumping from rock to rock at beautiful park, and they'd all been this thing. But anyway, she jumped from one boulder to another, and she had an accident and broke her leg. So, and what made it worse was she was starting a new job. So she was alone with me. And I swear, if you could do this in the experiments, then you could probably test it. But you have to actually need it. And that's where science goes a little wrong. Because usually in that machine-like repeatability, you don't really need being the new job. She doesn't have any time off from work yet. And it's a terrible way to start with a broken leg on crutches. Anyway, I didn't know that her leg would be healed, but it was. As I was talking to her, she said, wow, my leg feels itchy on the inside, right where the break was. I said, that's fantastic. Itchy is good. It's probably healing right now. Well, it was healing fast because the next time she went to the doctor, they said, your leg's not broken. But she had the x-rays. So that was all very confusing. And then she couldn't find the x-rays. And it was just these kind of things are fascinating because the kind of things that you'll experience sometimes don't go with, it's like you jump to another reality and the evidence is gone and all you've got are your memories. So it makes for a challenging experiment. I would love to see science done in these areas. And that's part of why we started this nonprofit 501c3 organization, International Mandela Effect Conference, so we can start studying these things. And so we need some good experimental designs, but the trouble is it won't be the kind of science that we've been doing before. Even IONS is still trying to work within that Western model, but we're going to need to go a little farther. So that's a fantastic question, Ed. And I don't know if I answered it very well, but.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We have another question from Randolph. Would you unmute yourself, Randolph?
Hi, Randolph. Thank you, Cynthia, for your lecture. I have read one of your books.
Yay. Love it.
I actually bought a copy for my son. You know, when you're talking about two worlds, I was having this fantasy. I had Max Tegmark in one world and Deepak Chopra in the other. And Deepak says consciousness is fundamental and matter arises from consciousness. And Max Tegmark says matter is fundamental and consciousness is really a form of matter called perceptronium. Two worlds.
So what was the question? Sorry, I laughed right over it.
How do you walk in those two worlds?
Oh, good question. Well, I tend to be along the lines of what you said. You're quoting Deepak Chopra, and I believe he's quoting Max Planck. You know, the consciousness is fundamental. You cannot get behind consciousness. And I would agree with the founder of quantum physics there. So because that's my mystical experience of the universe, that there's so much more than matter. Matter appears to be just a very small subset of what we're capable of measuring. So of course we love it because we can measure it, we can weigh it, we can size it up and look at it from different vantage points in our 3 dimensions, which is all we're capable of seeing. And even Max Tegmark would admit that probably we've got more like 11 dimensions. So, and I guess Max would say, well, then you can see the matter fully, maybe. I'm not convinced. I'm going to go with Deepak Chopra on this one primarily and just say, like, let's trust that. I would rather put my faith in consciousness first, because that's where the meaning is. That's where the feeling is. That's where all of the spirit that is imbued in our lives, where I feel like my life does have meaning and purpose. And I feel like when I love someone or something, it's real. I don't think that's ever going to be encapsulated in some careful analysis of matter. That's my bias.
Could I ask you one more question?
We've got quite a few questions, so make it brief.
Well, do you think consciousness is code word for God or spirituality? Or, I mean, it's a new buzzword, but it seems to, it's like they say ego over soul, soul over ego. I mean, where do you stand on that?
God is, to me, my greatest love. So it's like you call, and I don't think God minds if you call God cosmic mind, divine source, whatever you want to call it. You could say it's all consciousness, fine. Unity consciousness, fine. And so to me, that's the supreme level of consciousness. But I don't confuse myself with that level of consciousness. So I'm not one of the people that says it's all one or will. We are all connected, we're all entangled, but I would not say I am God. I'm pretty clear on that delineation, and I'm a big fan of that ultimate divine source consciousness.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, Barbara, you had your question in the chat too, so if you would unmute yourself and go ahead and ask next.
Yeah, I was resonating, Cynthia, with your story that you told about your daughter, and I didn't quite understand it. What I was getting from it was you were saying that you sort of had an intuition that she might fall.
Yes.
And then you recognized that if you put your focus and attention on that happening, it might encourage it to happen, or something like that, which is sort of what we talk about in Unity about, you know, you have to control your thoughts, what you put your attention on grows, blah, blah, blah. So could you just go into that a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, sometimes I'll get what you might call a psychic impression, or like a preview, or what do you call it? It's precognition. I'll see precog. Yeah, I'm a precog. So when I get a precognition, I'm okay. I am keenly aware that this is a voting opportunity for me personally. That's what I've experienced. So when I get a precognition, like I've had some where the world was about to explode or something, and my vote is no. And then I realize, oh, I'm part of a fail-safe team. I'm not the only one, but there's a whole team of us who are capable of putting our votes in. We're feeling it, and we're all voting no. And so this is part of my faith, is that I recognize that this is happening, and I know that there are those of us who are operating on these internets where it's not the telephone, it's not the internet, that's not needed. It's something where I can feel it, and I just know this is a precognition. I'm being given an opportunity. How do I vote? And sometimes it's happened. I don't necessarily know what's going on. Like once I was driving in the car, going somewhere, and I could feel that the car was going to be in a crash. I felt like it was our car, but I just told my husband who was driving, I said, I just need to do something, which was going into a theta state and voting no on the crash and pushing it away. It felt like I couldn't quite stop it completely, but I could back the crash impact away. And then I got home and got a phone call from a friend who said, can you teach class tonight at our martial arts studio? Because I've been in a car accident. And I said, what time did it happen? And the time I got was exactly the time I was driving in my car and pushing that accident. So I'm sure his accident was much less than it would have been. So that's the kind of things that happen. And sometimes things are averted completely, like the world ending, and there's no proof of anything. But I just know, well, I worked on that one. I know I did. I know how I voted.
Thank you. That's deep.
Thank you. Thank you. Claire, you're up next. Good to see you.
Yeah, oh gosh. Cynthia and Pat and Susan, thank you so much. This has just been an exceptional hour with your sharing. I really appreciate it. And I wanted to go back to the weeds just momentarily when you spoke about the friend that had broken her leg, and you're imagining, and somehow it healed. And if you can give us a specific how I've worked with a Hawaiian kahuna, and he worked a lot immediately with the auric field, let's just say, to heal bones and that kind of thing. But I'm
Yes.
just wondering if you were, how it happened for you, how you
Okay.
had it happen or not.
Yeah, well, in that particular case, she'd seen me previously, like a year earlier. We'd been to lunch, and when we were together, and I had a cut on my arm for some reason, and I just put my hand over it, and then the
Yeah.
entire wound vanished. And I was hoping she wouldn't notice, not because I wanted to hide it, but because if you have multiple observers, sometimes they can wreck the healing effect if they think,
Yes.
if they believe, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it worked. She was very supportive. I took my hand away, it was healed, and then she did notice and she commented. And so I said, well, you know, sometimes I do this and it helps. And so she'd seen that, and I reminded her of that. And she was a dear friend of mine. I still adore her. I think she's fabulous. So it helps when I felt that entanglement, that love for Susan that I have. And she told me of what happened to her leg. And of course, to me, I realized she needs her leg back. So I'm voting like she needs that. I'm putting my belief, like I feel she needs her leg fixed. This is not just something like, let's do it for some science test, or let's prove that this works. It's not about proof. It's not, you know, it's, to me, this matters. It's my dear friend. It's her leg. I need her to be better. I didn't know this would actually heal it, but I know that that it can't hurt, and sometimes these things are instantly healed. And sure enough, amazingly, her leg, that itchiness, she could feel it itching all night, and then the next day it was healed. So love is the healer. Entanglement, if you want to look at it that way, the quantum connection that we have, heart-to-heart connections of love, that's very real. And being in a joyful, relaxed state of mind helps me when I'm helping to facilitate any kind of healing, whether it's a machine or a person or whatever, because things can be healed too. You know, things like anything can be healed. People, machines, anything.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. You know, you're reminding me, you know, you're talking about the bees coming by and buzzing, and you can feel the wings and say hello and thank you for, you know, watering and all that. I was at a 10-day meditation retreat, and there were mosquitoes around a lot. And I don't know, it was on the 5th or 6th day, but I was pretty relaxed and observant. And a mosquito landed on my forehead. And rather than, you know, hearing it buzzing and doing any of that, it didn't do that. And by golly, that little gal, whichever it was, landed, sucked my blood, and left. And I had no itch, no poison left, because I don't know. I think it knew that I was going to be okay without a little bit of blood that it needed. And so just enough. I've always thought about that though, because we're always, you know, like this around mosquitoes. Yeah. And these guys serve a purpose. So anyway, enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire. Barbara.
Yeah, you know, I just love self-healing, and I believe it all is true that it's happening. And I was wondering if you might share some ways that I or others interested could move more into that place in consciousness where we are more easily in those two worlds and open to, because for example, you know, I need better lab tests. I need more normal blood tests that will show that a certain chronic condition I'm working with is healed. What might I do for that?
Well, you know, I love this question, how good can it get? And I live by it. So, you know, whatever, I'm dealing with a chronic condition right now because I've got this long COVID I'm working through, believe it or not, which I didn't really talk about much, but now I'm coming out the other side of it just with supplements and some natural healing techniques and so forth. But so I can really empathize with that. So what you need to do is stay positive no matter what. So that's the step one. How good can it get? No matter what's going on, no matter what it looks like, just feeling that how good can this get? And rather than thinking that you know what it is or getting into an adversarial posture with it, which I didn't do with that wild dog pack in Maui, thank goodness, because that could have gone badly, quite badly. So it's one of those things, it's just, you're so much better off relaxing, even in the midst of a chronic illness. Just relax and recognize, okay, here we are. I'm in a sand trap of life. Okay, I'm in the sand trap. How good can it get? Here we are. And just keep that positivity. That's going to be the main thing. And then from there, it's amazing what can happen, because once you get comfortable, next thing is I'd recommend getting to know yourself and feeling all of the levels of yourself. Really listen deeply. Listen to all the parts of you, because you may hear something like listening to that little mosquito that just needed a bit of blood or whatever. As you listen to yourself, you can start feeling, what is it that you really need? And if you're not afraid to listen deeply and to go into that, that can be the whole reason that the chronic condition is manifesting. And it could be a great gift. So very often these kind of illnesses are much more than what they appear, and they can bring tremendous blessings. So knowing that can help. And then love is the ultimate. And connecting with that cosmic mind, divine source, that's the source. For me, that's the most ailments, illnesses, injuries come from a lack of connection to that divine source. So you're going to be really doing yourself a world of good to every day make that connection very clear. Put yourself in that state of reverence, the highest level of reverence you can possibly feel, just real gratitude. And then that reality shifting journal that I mentioned, that's totally excellent for healing. You can have a goal. I will be completely healthy. I'll be in balanced health. You can put your daydreams in there. You can put what you're grateful for in there. And you can witness literal miracles happening that way, because it's just bringing it all together, all the levels of yourself coming together and getting a chance to come in shared common dream with this need that you need healing. And that's happening now.
Thank you,
Beautiful.
Cynthia. I think we have time for one more. Shauna
Thank
wanted to ask a question.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here this evening. I live in Australia and have just become familiar with Cynthia Sue's work, and I'm just enraptured. It's changing my life. I remember avocados with the double A as well, Haas.
Yes.
That was definitely, I'm with you on that one. And just with regard to healing, I just wanted to share a little experience. My dad had had a lung transplant and was really, really unwell. And the doctors didn't know what was wrong. And, you know, he was on his way out. And I was like, I don't even know if I'll have time to get there. So I went to yoga and I thought, okay, and then instantly I went into this healing where his mom came and visited me, and I could see him so clearly beside the hospital bed. And this yoga class went for an hour and a half, and she just guided me through this remote healing of my dad. And, you know, we got an email the next day saying that he was incredibly recovered. They didn't know what had happened. So I spoke to my dad about it 6 months later when he was really well. And he said, oh, I thought I was just having this trip from the morphine. So he actually felt it too.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's such a beautiful blessing when you get that kind of confirmation.
Oh, it really was. And just everything that you've said about this connection, it's like once for me, it was letting go and allowing myself to believe in it. And then once that happened, it was just like a deluge. It's just amazing. So thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you do.
Thank you. It's so good to hear.
Okay, well, we've got a couple more minutes. Susan, you had your hand up. Can you unmute yourself?
Thank you, Cynthia Sue. This has been really wonderful, as so many people have said. And I was especially taken by your story of the lost earring for its being a physical item in the material world. So I have a recent experience of having given a very trustworthy friend my credit card to go make a purchase for me. And he came back saying, I don't know how this ever happened, but I lost your credit card. So that was about a week ago. I am holding this certainty that the credit card is waiting to return to me. And I check every day. There's no activity on the credit card. He checked every kind of way he could think of for where it might be. So it is somewhere out in the world. I am so ready to invite it to be back in the particular compartment in my wallet. I can see it, I can feel it, it's invited to come back. So when we are in this kind of in between place of holding and it's not manifested yet, what suggestions do you have for that period?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I did that a lot when my daughters were young because they would misplace things, and and things would actually literally go missing quite often. So we would just say, "Hope for reality shift." It's a fun thing to say. You want to get into that little girl, joyful, giddy state of happiness. Like, you're not going to ask any questions. It's like you said, it can just show right back up in the wallet, which is kind of ridiculous, like, okay, but it literally might do that. And you might start, what I recommend doing is pay attention to daydreams. You might start feeling like you see it. Like a particular memorable occasion, my daughter lost a juice cup and I could just see it sitting on top of the refrigerator. And I was walking in a circle, hope for reality shift, check the top of the fridge. And I just keep walking, look around the house, come back, look on the top of the fridge. And one of those times I looked on and my daughters couldn't reach the top of the fridge. One of those times I walked around and there it was, like there it is. And I've done the same thing with a little case of jewelry that I think was stolen at a holistic fair that I went to. It was like my little mini purse of jewelry and it was gone. And it came back in the house the same way, in the house, which is not where it had vanished at all. But I just kept walking a circle in the house. There's something about walking a circle that's very helpful. If you can walk a circle around, walking through hallways is very helpful. I think it gives our subconscious permission to walk through portals. I think subconsciously we see the doorways and we think, aha, I'm in a new reality now. So give yourself permission to do that. Walk around, keep that joyful state of being. How good can it get, of course, and and hope for reality shift, Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have
Okay.
two more questions. If they're brief, we can do both. Melinda, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi-
And then Tom.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, aloha, hi.
Aloha.
So I I did lose an earring, and I was having lunch actually with Cynthia, and one of my earrings got, my beloved earring that I had gotten. I live in Hawaii and I had gone to another island and I saw these and I bought them and I loved them so much. And I got home, she was in Berkeley, I was in San Francisco. It was a long drive. I get home and honestly, there's only one earring. And I'm like, oh my God, I go through my purse, my hair, my this and that. I get in touch with Cynthia. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And she's like, okay, so it helps if you say, gee, it would sure be nice to have a reality shift. And I had called the restaurant and asked them to look on the sidewalk. And, I'd gone through my car. And so for 2 days, my husband must have thought I was nuts. I walked around saying, gosh, I sure wish I had a reality shift. And it sure would be great to have a reality shift. And I kept looking at the one earring that I had and I laid it out and I kept imagining the other one next to it. 2 days, I'm walking around, gee, it sure would be nice for a reality shift. I really love these earrings. This earring's missing and it's just beautiful. And I'm like, okay, fine. I walk away. I'm ready to retire. It's later in the evening. I have a little work to do on my iPad. And all of a sudden I hear a thud and this earring dropped in out of the midair onto the carpet right next to me. There was no shelf. There was no pockets. There was nothing. I went just joyful. I couldn't believe it. I picked it up. I'm jumping around the house. Oh my God, look, it's back. And of course, at that moment, my husband had left the room and then he came back and I was like, look. It was so incredible. I'm so excited. My voice raises and I don't sound very clear, but I have to say it works.
Wow.
It works.
Wow. Wow.
So,
what a great ending. What a great story. If everybody
I keep trying to get the spices in the cabinet. That hasn't happened yet, but I'm working on it.
Well, we're committed to ending on time and it's 8:30. And I know, Tom, you had a question and are you willing, Cynthia, to stay a couple of more minutes?
Oh, sure.
We're going to bring our program to a close first. So I'll ask everybody to unmute yourself. Just go down in your
okay.
lower left corner, down there in the bottom, unmute yourself so we can all give you an applause. Thank you so much.
Yay.
It's a great presentation. Thank you so much. And so if you need to leave, go ahead and leave. And Cynthia, you're willing to stay a couple of more minutes for anybody
Yeah.
who might still have a question.
Absolutely.
I'll still moderate, but don't anybody feel like you have to stay because we ended on time at 8:30. So Tom, you had a question and I see Claire does.
Your talk went way past my expectations. I'd never having heard of you before, and it was just, it opened my eyes in so many dimensions. And it gave rise to the question I have, which is, for about 25 or 30 years, I've been doing essentially automatic art. It's evolved over that time, and I'm actually starting to sell my art. And an example is in my virtual background here. A lot of what I do, the style is actually scribbling. And we'll see where the scribbling goes. Okay. So that's automatic art and with no intentionality. And so what are your thoughts about focusing my mind or not focusing my mind? Again, this non-intentionality is really a key factor for me. I have nothing in mind when I start. So your comments.
Well, I tend to bias in a how good can it get direction. It's that comes from being born aware, and I basically remember heaven. So when I got to Earth, I felt like I was on the wrong planet. Not to complain, but just to say things could be improved. And basically, I got feedback like, that's why you're here. You do remember that. That's why you're here. You're here because you remember that. You need to bring that. So, so I would, of course, recommend bringing that intention into your art. I know you have no intention, no guiding, but just I would recommend bringing in how good can it get, and just to let that be a guide, because it'll help. What's happening if you look around on the planet, you'll see that there is a great need for people to find art that can speak to them, and art, like all of the like philosophy and like storytelling, it has a capacity to touch our very soul. And so when you have a non-intentionality, that's fine. But I would recommend just to make sure that that you're moving in an uplifting direction, which is what I mean by that is your high self will recognize it as guiding people in a direction toward further reverence, love, compassion, kindness, everything that we consider good. So that's what I would add to it if you wanted any input. But otherwise, it's fine to keep just creating from no intentionality at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Claire, you had a question. You have to
Yes.
Are you unmuted? Okay.
Oops, wait a minute. I
You
unmuted
are.
James.
You are.
Oh, where do I unmute?
You're unmuted.
I am, good. Yeah, Cynthia, I am just wondering about this found objects things, because I've lost earrings and they've shown up, and all of that kind of magic. But I've also wondered about people who've crossed over and have left their bodies, and if you've had much experience with finding objects that communicate from them to you, for example. And I just wondered about that.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely feel a connection with people through objects. It's another feeling sense of feeling into that. And I like genealogy. I like to feel, I love dead people. So for me, it's like, yay, dead people. It's very soothing. So I love communicating with them. Sometimes they will indicate like, there's more information on my family, and like, really? Okay, let me check it out. Let's find that. Let's go do it. So I think communicating with dead people is wonderful because they're not really gone. They're always with us.
Okay.
And they like to be part of the family that we're all part of.
So do you ever find anything and then you have to find out from whom it comes, or how do you discover the connection? I guess.
I haven't done too much of that.
Holding.
Yeah, I haven't personally done too much of that. Would this be an archaeological dig or just going to a thrift store or?
Opening up a book to the perfect page that you just had with your late husband, a conversation about, and it leads you to, I don't know, more thought and communication with him, for example.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I get conversations a lot of times with discarnate entities like angels, fairies, elves. I just had one recently that really cracked me up. So yeah, this can happen all the time, and it's enjoyable. It just brings, for me, it just brings so much joy to life. It makes it so much more fun.
Yeah.
I wanted to.
Do you ever do workshops? And I'm done, Pat. I'm done after that. Do you ever do workshops, or
I have in the past, yes. And right now we're in a pandemic, so I'm not really doing those, but I do these talks, and I'll be open to it in the future for sure. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
I wanted to mention a couple of things. One briefly, I've never thought about this, and now I understand it. Over the years, not so much recently, but for like a long time, in my 20s and 30s and 40s, a lot of times something would be broken or not working right, and I would say, I know that's going to take care of itself, and it would. That happened so many times, and at the time I had no knowledge of quantum physics or anything. I just had a feeling that it would take care of itself, and it did, and I was always so happy, and I'd say, thank you, God, and it just happened a lot. So I wanted to mention that, and you have now helped me understand that.
Oh, that's
I
wonderful.
had a feeling that spirit is in everything, and I was somehow communicating, But what I wanted to ask you about tonight's work is, and maybe you answered this and I missed it, this thing about quantum jumps, do you connect it with the idea of parallel universes at all?
Yes, I do mention these theories in both my books, Reality Shifts and Quantum Jumps. And the book Quantum Jumps is the more recent of the two. So there I'm getting into the holographic multiverse, kind of like in California, we blend our menus. Like you'll have Thai food and Mexican food together or something. So I'm actually taking the two interpretations and bringing them together. Holographic interpretation with with one version of many worlds, which incorporates the holographic, so that everything is really connected, and yet at the same time we can imagine these possibilities, but there's this oneness around everything, this what you might call God, that connects us all, and within that we're given opportunities with free will to try these different possibilities. So that's what it would feel like. But I go into on the cover of the book Quantum Jumps, I'm showing how these two ideas come together, of the wormhole concept, where you can literally go through like a black hole and end up teleported through time and space, and that's very much the same thing as on the quantum scale, so that there's this analogous connection there, that could be the way these quantum jumps are happening. We don't really know. I mean, that's a fringe of quantum physics there.
Right. Well, gosh, this has been a very exciting evening. And do you want to tell people again how they can find out more about you, your website or anything?
Yes. Yeah, the best way to contact me is realityshifters.com. And if you want the slides from tonight, I can email them to you. My email is cynthia@realityshifters.com.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. This was so fun. So if you're not on our email list, contact me at everevolving@earthlink.net, and I will add you to our list, because every month we have a great program. So thank you so much, Cynthia. This was a wonderful presentation. So we'll say good night, bring our time to a close. It was so great to see everybody. If you want to unmute yourself, you could say good night or hello or whatever you want to say as we go out here. Just unmute, take your mute off.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was great to see everybody. Barbara, I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
whole world, the quantum world is fascinating.
Isn't it wonderful? Yeah,
Yes,
Colleen, you
yes.
got to come to all our events now.
Oh, I
And-
have to. Yes, I
Yeah.
have to. I just love the quantum physics ideas. All it goes with it, and extraterrestrial stuff too.
Yeah.
You never know. We're not the only ones out there.
Hey, Monica, good to see you. I'm so glad you made it.
Thank you. It's been really, really great. Really loved it.
Yeah, yeah. And Jim,
Thank you, Cynthia.
yeah. Yeah, good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you.
That means I love you, by the way.
Hi
Sign
there.
Noeticers.
This is really great.
Much love.
Hi, Claire.
See you on Sunday, Colleen.
Oh, I'm there every Sunday
I know.
on this machine here.
Don't forget the love train. Any of you guys who want to move through the, just a minute, it'll come. Very, very blank.
If you're talking about the train, I can't drive.
Yeah, but you can get a ride.
No, I don't. No, Bonnie doesn't want to go.
Anyway, the love train is happening on
I do everything. It has to be video. Whatever.
Good to see you, Mallory. Good to see you.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, this was so
Goodbye.
much fun. And Lisa, you didn't say anything tonight. Lisa, good to see you. Yeah, it was great. All right. Well, good night, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and close us out.
Yeah, okay.
Good night.
Thanks for
Thank
doing
you.
this, Pat.
Thank you,
Bye.
Thank you,
Pat.
Pat. Thank you, Pat.
Yeah.